Welcome to the Drum Shuffle, a podcast offering insights, perspectives, and conversations for drummers. I'm your host, Jamie Eads. What's up, everybody? Jamie Eads here with you. Welcome to the Drum Shuffle, episode number 8. So excited today. We have the incredible and fantastic Scott Pellegrom joining us here in just a moment. Scott is just a ridiculous drummer. If you don't know who Scott is, go check him out immediately. Watch some of his videos, and this interview will absolutely make a whole lot more sense to you, I promise. A little bit of information on the show. Our web address is thedrumshuffle.com. Our email address is thedrumshufflepodcast@gmail.com, and you can find more information on me at jamieeads.com. Okay, so last week we asked the question, is it okay to say that a drummer is a basher or a slammer? He or she bashes or slams their drums. Are drummer jokes okay? I asked that question to all of you, and I got some responses. I heard from my buddy Eric Weber up in Ohio, said doesn't really bother him. Drummer jokes are fair game. He actually texted me a couple of really funny drummer jokes. They were great. I'm not going to tell them here. Heard from Dan in Illinois. Said it didn't bother him either. But I'm going to play devil's advocate. I have a 13-year-old daughter who's a very accomplished ballet dancer. If a football player or basketball player said to her, "You're not really an athlete," I can see where there would be a rub. So words are important, and they do matter. Drummers are every bit as important as guitarists, bass players, saxophone players, pianists, whatever you want to say. So I would just say let's be careful how we describe ourselves, because a band is only as good as its drummer. Thanks so much for your responses. I really do appreciate it, and keep those emails coming. So with that being said, let's pay some bills. Los Cabos drumsticks may be the best-kept secret from drummers today. Los Cabos drumsticks makes the finest tools to touch a drummer's hands in the business. The best news, almost every popular stick size is available in both white hickory and red hickory. If you don't know what red hickory is, it's made from the heartwood of the hickory tree, unlike regular white hickory, which is made from sapwood. Red hickory drumsticks will hold up to even the hardest-hitting drummers. Their durability comes from the density of the wood, but they do not sacrifice the feel. Please visit LosCabosDrumsticks.com to learn more about their products. And don't forget to ask at your favorite retailer for Los Cabos drumsticks. All right, guys, our guest today is just a fantastic drummer up in Michigan. Scott Pellegrom and I met, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. He is a Dream Cymbals artist. That's how we come to know one another. I asked Scott if he would be interested in doing an interview for the podcast. He immediately said yes. And we had just a wonderful conversation, as you're about to hear. If you don't know who Scott is, I'm telling you right now, you want to follow this guy on Instagram or Facebook or whatever social media you use, because Scott, and we'll talk about this, Scott has a habit of putting up what he calls his first touch of the day. And it's really just him sitting down behind the kit and woodshedding first thing in the morning with his cup of coffee and his dog Pegasus. And it absolutely will inspire you in 20 seconds to go get behind your kit. Just a fantastic, phenomenal drummer. So with that, let's welcome Scott to the Drum Shuffle. Hey, Scott, good evening. How are you?
Not too bad. How are you?
Man, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Hey, thanks for taking the time and coming on the Drum Shuffle. We welcome you to the show.
Man, I love the name. It doesn't get any better than that.
Well, you know, I mean, it's kind of the first cool beat any of us learn is how to shuffle something, you know? So I just went with it.
It is, man. I dig it. There's nothing like a great shuffle groove.
There is nothing like a great shuffle groove. So Scott, what I would like to do, if you're cool with it, tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and how you got into drumming to begin with.
All right. Well, it's pretty similar here. It's the good old story of being born and raised in Nunica, Michigan. And, when I was about a teenager or so, my family moved to Spring Lake, Michigan, the bigger village. And I currently live in Grand Haven, Michigan. But in between there's a lot of stuff that happened. I was born and raised, I guess, growing up on a farm. My dad raised and bred exotic birds. We had monkeys. We had tortoises. Pretty much any bird you could ever imagine we had. And then we also had Arabian horses and cattle, chickens, turkeys, stuff like that. And then a big garden. So I was kind of raised out in the country, learned how to grow stuff and become friends with animals. And I learned how to hunt and fish and camp and forage and stuff like that. While at the same time, of course, going to public schools and having a lot of different tutors and mentors for music. The way I got into music is that it's kind of the same thing I tell anybody, is that when my mother was still pregnant with me, she guessed that I'd either be a soccer player or a drummer because I was so active, and especially active when she was teaching, because she taught next to the music room. And it was just kind of a joke. And I was born, and by the time I could kind of move on my own, I was hitting and smacking things, and people would put stuff in front of me, and I'd hit it, and I'd be occupied all day. and that's where I was, I didn't even have a time. It was definitely right around the time that I was able to kind of sit up on my own. And by the time I could crawl, I would go and raid the cabinets in the kitchen and pull out all the cookie tins and the pots and pans. And then my parents decided to get me it's like a Muppets or a Sesame Street drum kit. I'd have to look at the pictures, and there I was, like, in my diapers with some, like, Donald Duck earmuffs over my ears, and I would just sit and play and hit stuff all day.
So literally, you were born a drummer.
Yeah, there's not really many other things I've done in my life other than I played soccer for a long time, and I loved it, but it wasn't my passion. And I knew I wasn't going to do it if I were to go into college or as a profession. And drumming music was just like that thing that just set me off. I always thought about it. I dreamt about it. I obsessed over it. I watched, my Dave Weckl Back to Basics VHS.
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
It barely, it's insane. I even met him, and he signed it, and I still have it. It's in my drum studio. And that was like my Bible. That was my drumming Bible, was Dave Weckl. I think I was 8 when my parents got me that VHS, and I watched it almost every day until I got out of high school.
That's a really good one, and I think a lot of us have that one in our old kind of drum, as you said, the tape library. The VHS copy. That was one of my favorites, and I devoured it. Throughout my middle school and high school years as well. It's just a fantastic video, and Dave was and is the man. When it comes to that stuff, just a beast.
He's like one of the scariest drummers on planet Earth.
Yeah, well, for sure.
So good.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you're no slouch yourself. And we'll get to some of this stuff, but, I'm assuming then Dave is one of your big influences. Who were some of the other, drummers that you followed and really watched and tried to emulate as you were coming up?
I know. There's a few people right off the top of my head, because it was kind of who I was exposed to first. Like, when my parents got me that VHS, it was for Christmas, and I had it wasn't like a Pearl Export, but it was something really similar to that. It was like an 80s kit, and I remember it was a 5-piece kit, and it was black, and my parents for Christmas got me like 2 rack toms, like a 10 and a 12, because or like an 8 and a 10, that's what it was. And with that, the store suggested, yeah, you should get him this VHS. So I was just like brainwashed with Weckl, which I'm so thankful for, because I didn't know if the content was, really difficult or if it was really easy. I just sat in front of a TV and practiced with Weckl every day. But I was also raised listening to like Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich, just because of the big band era. So like once I heard Buddy, I literally went out and bought every CD or tape I could get my hands on with him.
Sure.
And I just would sit down and put on headphones and try to play along with every arrangement. So Krupa, Buddy, Weckl, and then I started to get into Dennis Chambers, and that just blew my mind. Like what he did with being able to flip the beat, groove super hard, doing linear stuff, and like never even hit 2 and 4, and I pretty much never even knew where 1 was at the beginning of listening.
Right.
I was so fascinated. And then he would come into a groove and lay down the pocket, and it would be like this huge sense of relief. And I go, okay, I think I know where 1 is, and then he'd go back and flip things around. But I just loved how he would just like create this tension in a groove and then just shred around the kit, like with the single strokes. And then he'd be back to the groove. So that blew me away. And then I got kind of turned on. People saying, well, man, if you dig Dennis, you should go back a little bit and check out Billy Cobham, and go back even a little bit more and check out Tony Williams. So once I got into that, like Billy and Tony were my guys. Like everything about their creativity, their phrasing, how they combine their hand and feet, the way they played the bass drum with the cymbals, everything like that, and like the way that they could just create this beautiful melody using the toms. So like my biggest influences really people that I just jumped into as far as I could, and I always come back to, are Tony Williams and Billy Cobham, Dennis Chambers. Those are like my 3 guys that I sound probably absolutely nothing alike, but I learned the most from.
Sure, absolutely. Well, and I'm kind of curious as well, were you, during this time, were you forming bands and jamming with other guys up there in Michigan, or were you just, locked away woodshedding on the kit?
It was all the above. Like I studied with Dr. Joyce Smith, like classical percussion and mallets. I studied with Tim Johnson and the legend Tim Franchek, along with Rupert Kettle. And at that time, so I was getting my classical training, my jazz studies, and then my brother Chris played some keyboards and a little bit of drum kit and stuff, so he was kicking my butt learning Van Halen and Journey tunes and Boston tunes and stuff like that.
Sure.
Jump from Van Halen was like the first tune I learned when I was like 5.
That's awesome.
And, so I was getting some playing in the basement. I also was going and taking the courses at the public schools, so I was part of the concert band, and then, grew into the middle school and high school jazz band. And my freshman year is when I got into drumline, and I really started to learn my rudiments. And that's when things really clicked for me. Like, once I started learning not only what rudiments were, but how they apply to the kit, that opened up so many doors. So, like, the rudiments, again, was kind of like my 10 commandments, but it was like the rudiments, it was like, okay, you need to know this stuff. And at that time, when I was like 14, 15, I knew no matter what, I've been fantasizing about drumming and being a drummer for a living and traveling the world my whole life. That's like what pictures I drew in kindergarten and first grade, was this 37-piece drum kit with my friends around it. That's what I wanted.
For sure.
And I met, I was told by the senior section leader and first chair drummer Jonathan Rogers, who was a big influence on me. He said, man, you got to check out this guy named Dorico Watson. He's up in Muskegon right now, and he teaches. You should, here's his number, give him a call, see if you can get lessons. And I thought, okay, I'm in the search for like the next great drummer to just totally kick my butt. And I called Dorico, and I started studying with him when I was about 14. And that was like when I look back at my life right now, like growing up and playing and being exposed to music and not being shunned away from playing music was a beautiful thing, and having the family behind me to be exposed to great lessons and concerts and stuff was huge. But leading up to that, like the moment I met Dorico, my whole life changed. Like the way I thought about teaching, the way I thought about playing, performing, interacting with humans, knowing what I know about gear, knowing what I know about clinics and how to make a living and how to be versatile. Like my whole school, like really started with Dorico, because he was that dude who was an unbelievable drummer, had amazing foot technique. He was gigging, he was teaching, he was doing clinics, he was going to PASIC, he was going to NAMM, he was recording with all kinds of people and touring. And I was kind of there, like when he started getting into endorsements and stuff like that, and that like showed me, if I'm here in Spring Lake, Michigan, and he's here in Muskegon, there's a shot that I could like figure out how to do this and really make it my living.
Right. Well, and that's something that I think a lot of our listeners deal with. And, I get asked the question all the time. I live in Central Kentucky, not exactly a music hotbed, right?
Right.
And I get asked all the time, why don't you move to Nashville or LA or New York or just any bigger city, really, to get more exposure and more opportunities? It's not necessarily about your geography. It's about how much work you're willing to put in, and I think you would agree with that.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I was raised the whole time with people saying, well, no matter what, whether you decide to go to university or not, you're going to have to live in LA, New York, or Nashville. And that's it. You have to be in these three cities, otherwise nothing's going to happen. Well, this is pre-Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. This is pre-MySpace. This is
pre-internet.
This is like most people did not have cell phones. And if you did have a cell phone, it was like a battery pack car phone. There's a big difference.
Yeah, man.
At that point, you had to be in the city to meet people and to sit in and to get on those tours. But, also for me, there's only a few artists that I think I would stop and drop in everything I'm doing to go on tour with. Other than that, I'm really happy being the DIY musician. And I really love doing it out of West Michigan. But, I did live in Portland, Oregon for a long time and toured all over the Pacific Northwest or the Northwest. And then I moved to Nashville, and I was in and out of Nashville for quite some time. And I also ended up moving from Nashville to Atlanta and did the Atlanta thing. And, this is like cliff notes of the timeline of my life. But I did go to those cities, and I flew to L.A. and New York, actually drove to New York more than I'd fly there, to go study with people, to go see the nightlife, to go meet people, I did all that. But then when I started noticing all this social media stuff happening, you're able to stay in contact and update what you're doing all the time. It kind of made things a bit easier because people could kind of see who you are and what you're doing, where you've been and where you're going. So, yeah, I mean, you could be in the middle of nowhere, and as long as you have a work ethic, and you're willing to put in a lot of time and not get a lot of reward for a while, you can make it anywhere, I think, at this time.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point, and some of our other guests that we've had here on the show, we talk about that stuff, and one of my guests was a SEO and social media expert, an old friend of mine, and on one of the past episodes we really talked about that and all the things that musicians can do today that we couldn't do just 15, 20 years ago. And you do a really good job. And for the folks out there that aren't following you on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all the different things, they need to be, because you are very good about just your practice routine. And I think, what am I trying to say here? First touch of the day. I see posts from you all the time that'll say, okay, here's my first touch of the day. And you're really fearless in your playing in that you'll try just about anything. You're one of the few drummers that has done a TED Talk, for example. Which I think is just awesome. And that's out online and folks can go do a search for that and check that out. But, I think what broke the internet and really blew my mind was the rubber chicken.
Yeah, the infamous rubber chicken.
Yeah, tell everybody about the
gone bonkers.
Yeah, I mean that's been seen millions of times. I mean, tell us about that.
It's okay. Well, I'll kind of lead into why the whole rubber chicken thing happened, but my whole Instagram page, I would love to title it something differently, but it's 90 to 95% all raw, organic, improvised, unedited beats, grooves, licks, tricks, and ideas, all recorded through the iPhone. Nothing else. Like, my whole goal for that page is to not be polished, not be produced, nothing, absolutely nothing is rehearsed. I just want to say, this is who I am, and I just want to show you where I'm at, and here's an idea. That's it. I'm going to show you my first touch of the day, whether it starts out good or not, just to show you that nothing is perfect, nothing is polished, because you see so many people that are really polished. You don't know if they've been rehearsing this solo or lick or song for how long.
Right.
And then they're recording with anywhere from 4 to 12 mics, and they're running things through preamps and all these plugins. Of course, things are going to look good, and that could be intimidating to people just starting out or people that are in that next level trying to discover their sound, So for me, it's just a page and a place for ideas that hopefully people dig. And one of those ideas mainly becomes I just moved into a house, but about 2 years ago, I had been living in a house, renting a house downtown here in Grand Haven, and it still is, but at that time was just Pegasus, my dog, and myself in like a 4 or 5 bedroom house. So of course every other room was filled up with drums and percussion equipment. And that's where I decided, hey, I'll teach out of the house, I'll practice out of the house, I'll write out of the house. So I did most of the rehearsals. I prefer to do rehearsals acoustically, so you can talk while rehearsing. So anyways, I'm in the house most of the time. And Pegasus, whenever I play drums, he either jumps up and wants to be in my hoodie, he'll just take a nap under the floor tom or by the bass drum, or while I'm playing drums, he'll grab his toys kind of to egg me on to play. And my mom and I would joke because she would come over and hear me playing, and Peg would be right there with his rubber chicken squeaking on it. So I'd be like, yeah, we're jamming, And then it clicked, like I was playing a hip-hop beat, and he balked the chicken a couple times, and it was perfectly in time, and I thought, okay, maybe I should try to get him to do that again. And of course, he couldn't. It's just like whenever he's feeling it. So I thought, oh, wait a minute. I got an idea. And I picked up the chicken, threw it in the hi-hat, and I pushed it down once, and it went bok. And I'm like, this is perfect. I rigged up my iPhone between like a roll of duct tape or something, because that's how I was recording. It didn't even use a little tripod. I would just like shimmy it in through something. And I hit it, and I did that, played a beat for like 30 seconds back when you could only use 15 seconds on Instagram, and I thought it was hilarious. So I put it online. I called it like Quack Beats, and I remember not thinking anything of it, and a couple hours later I went and checked my Instagram, and there was already like 20,000 views. And I'm like, wait a minute, or no, I'm sorry, it was on Facebook, because I released it through Instagram on the Facebook. When it was at 20,000 views, I thought, wow, that's crazy. And then all of a sudden, it went from 20,000 to 50,000 in like 30 minutes. And then it just like went 100,000, 150,000. And I sat back and thought, this is absolutely bonkers. And then I started getting people messaging me, hey, I just saw this over here, saw this over there, it's going bonkers in Australia, it's going bonkers over here. And then before I knew it, it was just like, boom, it was at 1 million views. And it kind of like capped out there. It got like ended up at 1.3 or something. But it just went crazy. And then it was like a month later, everyone was releasing rubber chicken, rubber duck, squeaky pig videos, just like I believe it set fire to the squeaky toy trend.
Right. Well, I mean, it's and for those of our listeners who check out the guys over at Drumeo, one of the lessons that you did for the guys at Drumeo was out of the box drumming. And I think that's that's one of your calling cards for sure. I mean, I've seen you play with kitchen utensils. I've seen you, just a little bit of everything. And it's really cool stuff. It's stuff that, most traditionalists probably wouldn't think of. You know what I mean?
No, but I feel like that's where a lot of us started. Like a lot of people, how did you start? Banging on tables, hitting pots and pans, playing on cookie tins, cardboard boxes, right?
Right.
And it's like we start that way because all we want to do is play. We want to hit stuff. We like sound. We like how it feels to hit stuff and create beats. And then all of a sudden, boom, we hit. I've got a snare drum practice pad. I have a drum kit, and now I'm just totally into gear, and that's it. And people leave where we started. I mean, just the human civilization. We've always hit stuff. We've always banged rocks and, stretched animal skin over logs and stuff. And then, to me, I think it's the most exciting thing right now because it's not explored.
Right.
People are not spending a lot of their time playing. I'm looking at the blinds right now. They're covering my window. I'm like, those sound great when you run your fingers over them, When you hit a rug with a stick, when you're dusting it off, it sounds good. I was on Lake Michigan, jumping on pieces of ice, breaking it into the water, and making samples out of it today, because all that stuff sounds so cool, and it's all around you.
Yeah.
At all times.
Well, your approach to things, and I'm thinking of, the 8 or 9 year old kid that sees this stuff and they go, well, I can't afford a $1,500 drum set and cymbals, but you know what? Mom and dad have this stuff laying around the house. So maybe I can.
Right, a 5-gallon bucket.
Exactly. I can pull out my, kitchen whisk, my egg whisk or whatever. And I can do what Scott did on his video, which is just so cool to me that it is out of the box, but we need more people thinking out of the box, which is just, it's really cool stuff. Now, you mentioned Pegasus, and I've got to give a shout out to my guy, Pegasus, the adventure dog. For those that don't know Pegasus is a Chihuahua, correct?
Yep, he's a black and white Chihuahua. People call him Cow Dog sometimes because he's perfectly black and white.
Well, this guy, Scott is not exaggerating when he says, I've got Pegasus in my hoodie. Pegasus will literally get in the front pocket of your hoodie and just chill there while you're playing the drums. And I mean, and I'm not
sleep the whole time.
I'm not talking about tapping the drums. I mean, I'm talking Scott Pellegrom is thundering away, doing these sick grooves. And this little dog, man, he's just asleep, hanging out, chilling, So Pegasus has his own Facebook page too, doesn't he?
Yeah, Pegasus the adventure dog.
Okay, well, we're going to get Pegasus some followers here today. So
yeah, he needs some. We've been a little slack on posting pictures lately because it's been so cold and we don't get outside that much during the winter. But we do a good job of updating all of his hikes and exploring rivers, lakes, and streams, and mushroom hunting and fishing and all that good stuff, as well as hanging out with some of the rock stars when people are in town and stuff. People will come and visit and kick it with Peg.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, if there was ever going to be a dog that became a drummer, it would definitely be Scott's dog. There's no doubt about it. Pegasus is the guy. So keep watching the Instagram and the Facebook, because if Scott can figure out a way to get him to hold a stick, it's going to happen, folks. I'm telling you right now.
It'll be fire. We're talking 1 billion views.
That's exactly right. Scott, to shift gears just a little bit, tell everybody about, some of your projects that you play with. I'm specifically thinking of the Scott Pellegrom Trio, SP3 for short. But you are the house guy at Third Coast Recording Company up there in Michigan. So if you would, and I know SP3 did your last release there at Third Coast. Third Coast is run by somebody everybody's going to know. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your association with that studio, and then tell us a little bit about some of your projects that you're working with.
All right. It's Third Coast Recording Company is a newer recording studio. The building was bought about three and a half years ago. And it was it used to be a laundromat. It was a church, and now it's a recording studio. So they're really, Bill Chrysler is the owner. Bill Chrysler is a really good friend of mine and a mentor and someone I really look up to, and him and his family, Benny and Dustin and Sarah, I got to give them a shout out because they're just amazing people. They're just full of love and full of supporting the arts and creativity. And meeting them was a gem. I mean, they are one of the reasons why I live in Grand Haven and not anywhere else in the world. I met Bill through a really good friend of mine, Joe Sturgill, who's an incredible singer-songwriter. And his band, Four Finger Five, was doing a number of records at Bill's old studio. And they said, hey, we're having some trouble with getting good drum sounds. Would you be willing to come in and drum tech on this record, maybe bring some of your cymbals? Specifically saying, will you bring in your dream cymbals? Because they had heard me play with them live, and they thought that they would mic up beautifully. So I said, yeah, I'll come in. I met Bill. And I started teching on this record, and it was kind of my first shot to not only drum tech and tune all the drums and set everything up. And while they're playing, they say, what type of sound do we need in the chorus? And I'd say, hold on, I think I know what cymbal. So then I'd run back and give the drummer a different cymbal. Long story short, I was able to kind of just sit back and say, all right, we got everything sounding good for each song. And I kind of sat in on all the sessions, and they would say, hey, what do you think about the groove here? Because the drummer was a really, really good buddy of mine who's a monstrous drummer. But sometimes when you're in the studio playing music that you've either been playing for years because you wrote it or you're just writing it, you might be thinking about the drum part, not necessarily
the song. Yeah.
And so when you're sitting in listening, you might go, oh, man, what you're doing right now is totally working. Or what if you just did take out that lick, certain small things. Now it's a song. And what I kind of learned from that session was, wow, it's really nice to have a drummer that you know and respect, not only recording, but the other way around, because you can hear all the things like, what would Steve Jordan do? What would have Bonham done? What's things like that when you're listening to a song. And it's much easier to go, hey, you should don't crash the cymbals here. Just wash out the hi-hats.
Right.
So when that started happening, Bill kept saying, hey, well, why don't you come around? Why don't you come around and meet up and hang out? So I started doing that, and we became buddies, and I started doing more and more sessions at the old studio, and I started drum teching, and then I started teaching out of there. And I kind of moved most of my Michigan life into his studio. And then he decided, hey, I want to buy the building and I want to do this full on and really make a big recording studio that's open to the world. I want people from all over the world to come here. And just cliff notes with Bill is that he's been just a world-renowned sound engineer, front of the house sound engineer, in-ear monitoring, and he's invented and prototyped all kinds of stuff, and he's worked with everybody. You think of, I don't want to be name dropping all these artists and stuff, but you just think of a mega pop artist.
Yeah, he's done it.
He's done it. He's worked with them. You think of some of the most popular, famous drummers you've ever imagined, he's done it.
Yep.
So he decided to start this recording studio, and we moved from Redwall North, which is a building that he had been leasing, storing a ton of road gear and his studio gear. And now we're in Third Coast Recording Company, which is Studio A and B, and then the back offices are kind of becoming Studio C, which is my drum room and my buddy and guitarist Kevin Cozell, his guitar studio. So there's a really big facility, and we have a film production company right next door to us in the same building. And it just kind of happened. Like, I never thought ever in my life that I would be more of a studio musician, but life kind of has a funny way of working things out, because as I was practicing, performing, and doing all the drum clinic stuff, which was more like drum solo, improvised drum solos, and using this rhythmist approach with the outside of the box type of stuff, I always thought, man, how would this stuff transcribe? You know, in a jazz trio and a jazz quartet, these ideas work great when you're in a theater or an auditorium where you can hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
And the acoustics are beautiful. But if I'm playing in a high-powered like funk band or a metal band, a lot of the stuff I do will get lost in translation, right?
Sure.
It's not appropriate necessarily. But when you're recording, there's no freaking rules. You can do anything.
No, well, that's right.
And you've got $10,000 microphones above you.
Click.
Yeah.
The microphones will get whatever you want, because you can use one microphone, you can use 20, you can use a room mic or a close mic, everything. You know, you can pop a bag of chips in a room with a lot of, you know, natural verb under a beautiful ribbon mic, and when you play that back, it's like the most glorious sound. And then you can layer that in with your snare drum, and it creates just this awesome sound. And people won't even know, because they hear like a live drummer playing, but then there's all this other percussive stuff kind of buried in the track, and then people don't know exactly what it is. And that's where I realized that this like rhythmist approach really is beneficial in the studio. And a lot of the work that I do is not like writing beats, but when artists come through and we have time to really like produce a track, that's where I go. We will record drum parts individually. We layer all these different sounds and these little tricks. So sometimes you're listening to the bass drum, there's like 5 sounds that you're not really hearing,
right,
that you don't know are there. And that's where this stuff just like the mad scientist in me kind of came out. And with the team, like with Bill Chrysler, producer, engineer, musical director, Joe Heidinga, Joe Sturgill, and Kevin Kozel, like being around like super talented, freaky talented people like that are whizzes with Pro Tools and Ableton and the SSL console that we use. On top of that team and the musicians coming in, like we're able to do some really creative stuff.
Yeah, well, and it's really awesome, good stuff too. And you know, you incorporated some of that stuff, you know, with your own band, you know, SP3. Tell us a little bit about that project, and you know, the last record that you guys did is just simply phenomenal. I mean, I don't know another word to say, but it's really good stuff. Tell us a little bit about that project.
Well, it's kind of the same approach. I started Scott Pellegrom Trio. SP3 was the branding that really caught on because it's easy to label, with a singer and keyboardist and acoustic guitarist Ryan Wilson and my buddy Kevin Kozel. I did it because I had been most of my career always a freelance musician and a sideman, you know, always working for other people, which is awesome. I'm grateful and blessed to be able to work, right? But
sure.
I was feeling that point of like the only time I really get to release is when I'm giving lessons with intermediate to advanced people, because they want the craziness, they want the super mad scientist technique stuff. And then when I'm doing like drum clinics and workshops, because it's me being able to just do what I love to do, right? It's like you can paint, if you're a painter, for so many other people in so many different ways, and you get commissioned to do stuff. But the favorite time is that you always come back to do your own thing. And I had just been working with someone who's now a very, very big pop artist, and we had been developing this person for a long time. And I got to the point, I'm like, man, I don't have time to just be weird. I don't have time to express all these ideas that I have. So that's when I said it's time to like man up. Because I've always run projects, but never under my name. I said, I'll just man up and run my own trio. And right when I started it really started to take off. And we started just gigging and getting tours all over. And I started bringing the trio out to do some drum events. And finally said, okay, I've never done a record. I really don't know how to start or finish a record. and I'm going to try to figure that out.
Yeah.
And we basically just came up with some rules. We started actually recording when it was Redwall North Studios, and then it had to take some time until, they got the building and we moved in. And then when we finished the record, the building was pretty much wide open, like not a recording studio at all, but I was like, we need to get this done. So the rule for me and for pretty much anyone involved was you get no more than 3 takes and minimal to no editing, little to no plugins on the drums. And so, like, although they were probably 2 tracks were straight up improvised, and all of the songs other than maybe Creepin' had a lot of at least 30 to 40% of improvisation going throughout the songs, for solo sections and ad-libbing. But the rule was I wanted to be as improvised as much as possible, little to no polishing, leaving all the mistakes in. I don't want anything highly produced. Like, this is who I am and where I'm at now. I looked at it as kind of like punk jazz and just saying, I want it to be real. That's it. And that's what it ended up being.
It's awesome. I mean, it really is. And, I think when you listen to it, you can tell that, you guys weren't, flying verse sections from from the beginning of the song to the end of the song in Pro Tools. I mean, you can tell it's guys in a studio jamming, which is what makes it so special, in my opinion. It's just a great record.
That's what I wanted it to be. And that, when writing that record, Ryan Wilson was leaving to start another project, and I started pulling in some other musicians. So, like, it kind of became SP3 and Friends, Scott Pellegrom Trio featuring so-and-so, and it kind of opened up some doors because the trio had been hitting it pretty hard for a couple of years. And I thought, well, yeah. And then I just started to confuse people. So I'm like, okay, we're the Scott Pellegrom Trio plus so-and-so and so-and-so. So forget, we'll bring out whoever we want, whatever we're feeling for the occasion. And since then, I've learned so much. I mean, that record really, to me, is like 5-6 years old. And maybe I released it a couple of years ago, and I probably haven't listened to it since we released it. But it just kind of was one of those things, like, I needed to get it done. I needed to learn the process on my own. And now I've been in the process. I've been writing, actually, for my own, like, a solo EP for just the whole rhythmist approach, making the drums and percussion and the world around me kind of the feature of the music. And then I already started recording with the trio with Bernhard Lackner, the bassist, amazing bassist and friend from Austria. And I have some more stuff to write. So if the studio wasn't so busy, I would get a lot of stuff done. But my guitarist and buddy Kevin Kozel, who sings and plays bass and does all kinds of stuff, he's one of the head engineers there too, so he's very busy. And I don't really run any recording program or audio or video really yet. So that's a new world I have to get into. So in the time, I just do a lot of work on my iPhone, and I'm going to be releasing a lot of stuff here, and I don't know if anyone will like it or if it'll be well received, but I'm just at the point now where I'd rather release stuff just for the heck of it and put it out into the world before my time passes. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Well, I mean, I feel safe in making this bold assertion here. You've got many, many years ahead of you, Scott. You're you're a young guy, and I hope that the output remains prolific, because all of us, I joke with you on social media all the time. When I share your videos and stuff, I'll say, and once again, Scott Pellegrom making us mere mortal drummers look silly. That's kind of my go-to tagline when I'm watching your stuff. But us mere mortal drummers need guys like you in the world to inspire us, and you've got a lot of years left to do that. So I want to switch gears just a little bit, and you and I met through our mutual friends at Dream Cymbals. We're both on the artist roster there. You've been working with Dream for a number of years now, and you actually have your own signature line of products. The crop circles and the naughty saucers bear the Scott Pellegrom name. which again, kind of out of the box kind of things, for a cymbal company. Tell us a little bit about those products and how you worked with the guys at Dream to develop those.
It was kind of one of those things. I mean, I'll just give a shout out to Andy and Craig and Ed and Ray and, of course, everyone else. If I left out anyone's names,
you forgot Brian.
Amazing. Oh, yeah, Brian. Brian is the reason I'm there. Brian.
He was our first guest on the Drum Shuffle. He was my very first guest. So
really, he's an amazing guy.
We can't not mention Brian. He'll kill me.
Yeah, and at the same time, I'd probably kill us for mentioning him because he's off the grid.
For sure.
I've known him for a long time, and we've always crossed paths. And the last time we did was when he, got the gig with Dream. And he called me. He said, "Man, I know you're with blah, 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 but I think I found a company that you really could get behind, and I think you'll totally dig." And it kind of took me by surprise. So okay, well, he's like, "Well, I know you're going to Nova Scotia to do blah, blah, blah drum festival. We're going to be there. Just stop by and check it out." I checked out the cymbals immediately. I saw the Bliss line.
Yep.
And it was done. I mean, that was it. It was this is the sound, the feel, the touch I'm looking for. And that's 9 years ago, 9 or 10 years ago almost, Yeah. And so much has developed since then. But the whole thing with the Crop Circle and the Naughty Saucer, one, because of Dream and their recycling program, it made these ideas possible. And on the other end, the whole idea for the Crop Circle and the Naughty Saucer actually happened when I was 14.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, it's something that came out. Okay, and this is just my dirty little secret that I'll share with the world. I remember because of the Dave Weckl Back to Basics, he always had that piggyback China crash stack that was off to his right that he used for accents. And I always wanted that sound. I loved the piggyback idea. And I started using a China and a crash and trying to get a sound like that. Well, my parents bought me a really nice crash cymbal by a certain company that I always wanted because Mr. Weckl used it.
Yeah.
And I had that cymbal, and I was obsessed with it, so obsessed with it that I broke it.
Oh.
And I broke it because I also was really into Nirvana and, Smashing Pumpkins and stuff like that. And I broke this beautiful 16-inch cymbal, but the way it broke is that the cymbal cracked and fell off of the bell.
Okay.
So it wasn't like I just cracked the edge. I remember having tears, oh my God, my parents are going to kill me. I ruined this beautiful cymbal. And there's no way, because I had broken old Chinas and stuff, and you see it on videos today. People will just play that cymbal until there's nothing left to it. But the bell, it fell off the bell.
So you basically created a Naughty Saucer by accident.
Yeah, and it was just 16 inches, and the hole was a bit smaller. And I remember taking it off and looking at it for a while, and while I was playing, going, "Man, I feel terrible about this." And then I looked over at this China cymbal I had that I really didn't like the sound of it. And it was one of the traditional China, so it kind of goes out and you have the weird elongated bell. And I took that crash cymbal and threw it over, and it fell right on top, and it went, and I thought, "Oh my Lord, I think I've done it. I found the coolest sound." So I nicknamed it the Trash Can. Nice. And it was something I used up until I was 25, at least that cymbal, which I still have. I had my whole family sign it. Well, anyways, I've been using that, and I thought, man, this is such a cool idea that I could take this off and then throw it on my hi-hat, and I could throw it on my crash cymbal. And I just thought, well, how would I market this? How would this even happen? Well, then I was hanging out one day and had been playing Frisbee, and I saw one of those Frisbees that's hollowed out, where it's just kind of like a ring.
Yeah, sure.
Just like a new age Frisbee that really doesn't make any sense because it's not as cool as a regular Frisbee. But when you take that, they're the same size as a snare drum, and you can put it on your snare drum, and it makes it as a mute. And I thought, wow, this is a really cool idea. And I started thinking, like, what if I could shave out the hole bigger, blah, 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 and that's how the crop circle was born. So back in 96, 97 is when I realized that you could have a cymbal that moves all over the drum kit without having to take it off with wing nuts. And then I was probably about 22, 23 when I discovered the Frisbee that acted as a beautiful drum mute on a snare drum. And then it just clicked, like, I need it to look like this Frisbee, but I need it to be a cymbal so there's cool sounds. And that's how the crop circle was born. But the original prototype of the crop circle was the Naughty Saucer. So after we saw that people really dug the crop circle, and other companies started making ideas just like it, and we started seeing them on TV and all over social media, I thought, people might really dig this Naughty Saucer thing then too, because it's even trashier and louder.
Right. Well, the crop circle, I mean, when I'm in the studio, it's one of my secret weapons. You can lay it on your floor tom, you can put it on your snare drum, you can, hang it over the bell of your ride cymbal. I mean, it's a really cool thing. And I think it's pretty awesome that's something you brought to the table for Dream Cymbals after thinking about it for so many years. I did not know that story, so that's hence my shock with that.
Yeah, well, I think that's the first time I've actually shared the whole, like, the guys over at Dream know the story, and of course my family and some of my close friends here, because my friends here, like everyone knows, just like you're saying, you like to joke with me online, like that's my whole life. I love to joke and be sarcastic and give each other a hard time, and my friends do that with me. They're always like, what are you up to now? What's something, they're always making fun of me. And people know about my trash can, my original cymbal that created this whole thing. And I think we're just in that time where you can only play so many licks and tricks. You can only play in rudiments a certain way and sound like other people before you have to figure out kind of your own sound, your own path. You have to think outside of what you've been exposed to and start digging in within yourself. And these type of products, there's other products out there too that are doing some really cool stuff that really can change, even if you have like a entry-level drum kit and you want to sound professional, you can throw some heads on, throw a crop circle, a Naughty Saucer, and some of the other drum kit additives out there, and your drums are going to sound great.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really, really cool stuff. I certainly, obviously I'm a huge Dream Cymbals fan. I've been on their artist roster, I think 3 or 4 years now. So love those guys and they treat me like family, and I'm not trying to make this an ad for Dream Cymbals, but, the crop circles, the Naughty Saucers, we're not talking about stuff that's super duper expensive here. It's not like $500 or $300.
Exactly.
$100, you got something you can throw on your kit.
Exactly. I mean, I think, there's a couple different sizes of the crop circles, and I think, the larger of the two, like the list price is, I don't know, $85, $90 or something. It's not crazy, and it's a really cool effect. So if we got any guys or gals listening that want to try it out, there you go. It's well within most drummers' reach financially, for sure. Scott, I really appreciate your time, and I don't want to take up too much more of it. But one of the traditions here at the Drum Shuffle is we ask everybody. And before I get to this, I know that you are currently giving lessons and taking on students up there in Michigan. Tell us where we can find more information on you and get in touch with you should anybody out there want to come take some lessons from you.
I'll say this. I'm slowly moving my entire life and catalog to the online world, and I will be having subscriber-based websites and a place where you can access masterclass workshop stuff. But I've been going through the archives and going through filming and getting ready to find time to do these lessons. So my website right now is always out of date. It probably says I'm in the Czech Republic right now or the UK. So the best way you can go to my website, scottpellegrom.com, make fun of it, or write something and give me a hard time. But Instagram is really the only thing I use now. I don't really use Facebook or Twitter. I have all those accounts, and they're there. But I just really enjoy Instagram. I think it's still a very cool platform, and you're seeing a lot of people sharing unique ideas. You see people from all over the world, just like this year's NAMM. They're hanging out with the cats from Drum Gab to Drummers Resource and all these different podcasts and these different drummers that are getting attention through Instagram. I just think it's a really cool place. So if you want to find me, just go to Scott Pellegrom Instagram. You'll find me there and give me a hard time.
Okay, well, you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Give Scott a hard time. He enjoys that, okay?
Yep. It motivates me.
So, final question. We do this with every guest that we have on the Drum Shuffle, Scott. Give us your one best piece of advice for drummers, musicians, and it can touch on anything you want. It can be from, practice routines to how to get further in the business. We just want you to give us your one best piece of advice.
That's hard for me to do, but I'll say, if I narrow it down, I'll give a couple pieces of advice without going on a tangent. One, never give up on your dreams and look at your dreams more so as plans. And when you take those plans and put them into action, you can make them a reality. And that is important. And just because you are in love with something that you do and you're passionate about it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It will probably be quite the opposite. It will probably be very difficult for you to prove your love and worth to that craft. But if you pursue it, you'll never regret it. And above all, cherish every moment that you have and be the best human being that you can, because you never know what people are going through. You only know what you've been through. And it's really important to reach out and connect. Anytime that you feel like being spiteful or saying something negative, make sure that you turn that around and make it positive, because there's no harm in being positive, and people are going to want to be around you if you're positive. And therefore, you're going to end up working.
Yeah,
because you have a hard work ethic and you love what you do and you're fun to be around. In any career, in anything in life, those are good qualities to have.
Very, very good advice from Scott Pellegrom. Scott, thank you so much for your time and coming on the Drum Shuffle. We really appreciate it. I would love to have you back anytime. I'll make you a deal. When you get your subscriber-based website launched, up and going, I will absolutely have you back on this program, and we will do 45, 50 minutes of review of the new and updated scottpellegrom.com. Does that sound like a deal?
All right. That's cool. I'm down with that. It'll give me some motivation. It's going to be a little wacky and goofy, but I think people will dig it.
I would not expect anything less from you, Scott, just simply because you are the out-of-the-box guy. And honestly, we barely scratched the surface. I didn't even get to talk about your stupid, crazy 280 BPM single-stroke rolls that you can do. So we'll save that for next time.
All right, sounds good. You can holler at me whenever.
Awesome. Scott, again, thanks so much for coming on, and we'll talk to you real soon, okay?
All right, sounds good.
All right, bye-bye.
I want to thank everybody for listening today. Hope you really enjoyed this episode. I sure did. It is always a pleasure to talk to my buddy Scott Pellegrom. Just a fantastic drummer. Again, scottpellegrom.com. He promises he's going to keep that or get that updated with all kinds of stuff. And kids, I'm telling you right now, I don't care what your level of playing is. If Scott is offering lessons, take one. He will help you play better. I promise you that. As always, our web address is thedrumshuffle.com. Our email address is thedrumshufflepodcast@gmail.com, and you can find more on me at jamieeads.com. Keep those emails coming. We love hearing from you. The one favor I always ask for, hit the subscribe button to whatever platform you're using to listen in today. Also, leave us a rating and review. It helps us tremendously to continue to grow, and we really do appreciate it. So until next time, may your head stay strong and your sticks never break. Cheers.